Games are always a great way to transport yourself to a brand new world, and this year, my journey in gaming took me all the way from Alaska to the moon and far past the stars as we know them. I saw a dark vision of a familiar kingdom and what came long before. I've seen my fair share of supergiants that saw me go through hell and back. I also revisited some old familiars and what lies beyond for their franchises. Suffice it to say, much like 2020, it's been a big year in games. Last year I featured games that only released in 2020, but I feel like that would be a disservice to the truth of my overall experience. Naturally, I want to talk about it, so this will be your first and only spoiler warning for the following games. With all that out of the way, here are my top gaming moments of 2021. As always, let's get into it. The Ashtray Maze, Control. Control is Remedy's most recent look behind the curtain at the weird and the wicked. The game puts you in the shoes of Jessie Faden, a woman touched by tragedy and a bizarre string of events at a very young age. Forever changing her life, she one day ends up on the doorstep of the oldest house, a building with ever-changing internal structure, shifting rooms, and enough weirdness to fill an entire DVD box set of the Twilight Zone. The oldest house is the headquarters of the Federal Bureau of Control, a clandestine federal agency that specializes in investigating paranormal anomalies that leak into our reality from a sort of void dimension. They're kinda like the Men in Black for all things weird. A series of Arthurian events lead Jessie to take up the service weapon, a special transforming gun welded by the director of the organization. Now the burden of getting the oldest house in order falls to her. Control is filled with all sorts of terrifying oddities and mindfucks. It also has a wicked sense of humor surrounding the mysteries of the paranormal. Now, we've seen outright strange and trippy titles before, even from Remedy themselves, but Control has a level of execution that makes it a unique, solid, and engaging game that help elevate it among similar games that will have you diving headfirst into the unknown without a parachute. The game kinda seems like a stylistic throwback to the PS2 era of games, with its contained environments, deceptively large-scale rooms of paranormal baddies to obliterate. It's definitely not afraid to let its freak flag fly. Between the ever-growing insanity of Dr. Darling, the macabre yet charming Threshold Kids, and a slew of other strange occurrences, the game accounts for a lot of what the fuckery to unpack. The one moment that stood out most was the Ashtray Maze. In order to even access this sequence, Jessie has to retrieve the Walkman of the strange yet seemingly prescient janitor Ahti. What follows is a high-octane sequence scored by the Old Gods of Asgard, a fictional band reference in previous title Alan Wake, helping to bridge the continuity of this little Remedy-verse and inject some energy into Control, which it's far from short on. The song Take Control is a raucous heavy metal banger that sounds like it was written just for Jessie. The Ashtray Maze sequence pumps even more style and personality into a game bursting at the seams with those qualities. Admittedly, the music is the driving force behind what makes this moment so iconic, but the maze itself feels like the game boiled down to its barest essence. Shifting landscapes, tight corridors, and dynamic action bring the fight to the paranormal scourge of the Hiss with power, style, and grace. These elements are all inherently part of what make Control great, but combining all of them with a rad soundtrack make the Ashtray Maze a true standout kick-ass moment. I had a blast playing Control, and I sincerely hope we get to see more of Jessie in the oldest house in the future. When everything finally clicks, Hades. The title of this section is a bit tongue-in-cheek because I had a section for Skater XL that made the list under the very same title on my top gaming moments of last year. Hades is a rather personal, ethereal, and mad look at Greek mythology from the eyes of Zagreus, son of Hades, lord of the underworld. No, not that Hades. No, not that one either. There you go. Zag is desperate to leave the realm of the dead for very mysterious reasons that you unravel as you play and die, and fucking hell will you die. My first 25 or so runs were just me learning how to lose in spectacular fashion, and one time being extremely nervous and wary because I was having too good of a run. Seriously, that's what this game does to you. This roguelike features high-octane, wildly styled yet measured action gameplay tempered by random room orders, a cornucopia of item pickups, and an absolutely crushing learning curve. At least it feels that way for a while. These elements paired together set you up for an experience that keep you coming back even after you failed miserably for the 30th time, not unlike a Soulsborne title. Or I guess roguelikes? They're not exactly my thing. Though if you have recommendations, I'd love to hear them. All the boons and other items you gain from your fellow gods can interact and stack with each other in very interesting ways, and there are so many that the combinations and effects seem endless. Sometimes it feels so vast it feels like you'll never get any specific combination of effects ever again. After learning your weapons, enemy patterns, and being humbled and tempered by failure, you really start to make progress in ways that feel like second nature. You get to do a lot of fun things like beat the Fury Tisiphone till she learns your name. Conversely, you can beat the shit out of that boastful jackass Theseus till he learns to keep your name out of his mouth. There's also more mundane and joyless tasks, like exterminating rats en masse to find a sack of yuck to please your tri-headed good boy Cerberus. Luck is also definitely a factor here. Every new room is a new opportunity for an epic power-up, exactly the thing you need to keep going, or sometimes it's just duds that don't really do you any good in that particular moment in time. You've got to work with what you got, cause even if it's not the cream of the crop, you still gotta rise to the top. Oh yeah! Since the game gives you an insane amount of incentive to keep coming back, it staggers a lot of plot beats over several runs, which is also pretty ballsy of Supergiant since I'm sure a fair amount of folks won't return to see it through several times. It can get frustrating. I've been through it about 45 times myself, beaten it about 17, and every time, win or lose, some plot thread will eventually reveal itself. Whether it be the source of utter melancholy for Orpheus, the machinations of Nyx, the embodiment of night, or the deal with the devil made by Achilles. Or perhaps you can learn some history between Zeg and one of the many denizens of the Court of Hades. Obviously, the object here is to reach the gates of the underworld and face your father's greatest challenge for the right to leave. Even after finishing it dozens of times, it proves to be a challenging battle and victory well earned every time you achieve it. Take pride in each time you do. So I know I should have known better, I really should have known better, but after beating him the first time, I was so gassed after that life meter went down, oh my god, I can't even tell you. But much like the rest of the game, there is no mercy, and you have to face him again with a full meter and far more powerful. Because video games, that's what video games do, and I should have known that. It was such a crushing moment. Get that ambrosia flying, it's time to reach the top, baby. Although it's funny and ironic. Without getting into too many specific plot beats, Zagreus spends all that time trying to escape Hades and leave his life behind only to find that his home is exactly where it's always been. It was just missing a few things. Supergiant always knocks it out of the park, and Hades might be their strongest showing yet. A fighting Fing Fang Foom, Guardians of the Galaxy. Okay, full discretion. I never imagined that a Square Enix made Marvel game was gonna get a spot on my list. I honestly didn't even hate Avengers like that. Despite its severe lack of villains, repetitive and dull environments, and game-ruining loot grinder mechanics, I found that it wasn't without its charm and merits, and even briefly had fun with it. But there are a number of glaringly obvious reasons why it failed. There was a big skepticism going into Guardians, but it went on sale, so I decided, why the hell not? It dispels most doubts pretty quickly by being a really fun game with tons of style right out of the gate. It looks pretty damn great too, the presentation is amazing. Its biggest issue is that it might be a bit too long in spots. For example, the trek to Lady Hellbender's castle was way too long. I mean, you were just like floating around in a stupid little like contained forest, and it felt like a huge waste of time. Oh my god, and the bridge? If you were just gonna segue into a flashback like that, why even do the journey across the thing? It's way too long. We get to see now familiar characters try to make a name for themselves in the galaxy shortly after their formation. In some ways, they're shadows of their MCU counterparts. We've got Drax, intense and without a single sarcastic bone in his body. Groot, kind-hearted and helpful as ever. And Rocket is, well, Rocket. It's actually kind of uncanny how similar he is. Quill and Gamora differ the most, with Quill doing a better job towing the line between childish rogue and sympathetic character. He never really falls straight into the buffoonish jackass mode and manages to be more likable for it. Gamora is a bit more hip, less self-serious, and isn't deathly allergic to having fun.
Keen, the ice is amplifying our velocity! This is how I die! Have you lost your fucking mind?
Come on! If you forget it's incredibly dangerous, it's actually kind of fun!
I also like the lack of sexual tension between the two, as it allows them to explore different aspects of their characters to interesting effect. It also allows the story to focus on its theme of familial love. I don't really mean to compare mediums that much, but the differences are notable enough and help push a game over the top for me. Besides, I really wouldn't want an adaptation that so directly mirrors the movies in the first place. The gameplay is pretty fun, if not a bit repetitive, with all the third-person shooting, ability-slinging combat, light platforming, and exploration you can ask for in one package. The baddies are a bit generic and at many times become tedious bullet sponges. You kind of have to figure out the specific types of stacks and abilities you use from each partner in order to really take down the bigger guys. And they just take a fuck ton of damage. In fact, I feel like I see a lot of other Square games in this one. So much so that I once jokingly referred to it as Marvel's Final Fantasy of the Tomb Raider. In space! With some stagger meter courtesy of Final Fantasy and some light platforming and exploration a la Tomb Raider and the general Marvel vibe, it kind of feels like a monster mash of Square's most recent games lineup, which isn't necessarily a bad thing. I just thought it was funny and I wanted to point it out. I also like the inclusion of the element gun and the vital role it plays in the game. It's something that bafflingly left out of the MCU to date and finally had a chance to shine. There's pretty tight storytelling. The whole plot of the game is basically laid out in the first act, much to the gang's own would-be dismay. Drax mentions fighting and capturing Fin Fang Foom for warrior queen and conservationist nerd Lady Hellbender. After conning her and pissing her off, they need a big ticket item to get back in her good graces after the galaxy faces imminent danger from a much bigger threat. They pretty much go through every possibility they can until it becomes apparent that the original plan was the plan they needed all along. Fin Fang Foom has a pretty colorful history in Marvel and provides an exciting set piece of a boss battle that sets up a pretty amazing splash page that looks like it came straight out of a comic. The game is made all the better by the presence of the Dragon Lord of Kakarot? Kakariko?
The Dragon Lord of Kakarantara! Ah!
Thanks, mommy. Wait, what? Yeah, so doesn't this guy wear shorts sometimes? Does that mean he's just hanging wood here? Well, I guess Groot does it too, so who am I to judge?
I'm Groot.
This game has everything you'd expect from a Guardians property. A bit of bad, a bit of good, a rad retro soundtrack, and enough family disputes to make Dom Toretto think twice about his stance on the matter. Add on top of that a competent, relatively fun game with a decent story, and Guardians of the Galaxy makes for a great time. Reliving the Trilogy, Mass Effect Legendary Edition. Oh, Mass Effect. The trilogy that prompted a million think pieces about, well, name a thing, they've talked about it. Extremely divisive ending aside, the Mass Effect trilogy is often seen as a masterclass in gaming, world building, and storytelling, something BioWare really had a knack for. I played the first back in 2008 and I was immediately enamored by the scale and charm of it. Being able to create my own Shepard, navigate the idiosyncrasies of a larger galaxy, and interact with all of its alien denizens was exactly my kind of shit. It's Knights of the Old Republic with guns, and it's good, okay? Okay. The series has a very special way of making you want to explore everything it has to offer, and trust me, I scoured everything to further connect with this world. The ultimate goal here is to take the fight to the Reapers, the biggest threat to sapient life the Milky Way has ever known. The fight to defeat the Reapers is an emotional rollercoaster that sees you having to make difficult choices throughout the trilogy that affect the galaxy, even if some of those choices can feel hollow or inconsequential. They often say it's not about the destination, but the journey you have along the way, and for some players that absolutely had to be true because they believe Mass Effect 3 shit the bed so hard it's seeping through the mattress. The first time I played it, I was honestly really just sad it was over. I kind of swayed back and forth on it myself over the past 9 years, and I've ultimately decided that the ending doesn't matter to me. Things end. They have to. Sometimes they don't end well. But let's not get crazy here. Game of Thrones does not get a pass. Looking at the sum total of the trilogy, there are a lot more checks in the pro column than not. The ending doesn't undo all the time spent with characters you learn to love. The times you get to learn about them, how they endear themselves to you simply by being themselves. It's super satisfying to see their stories develop over time, like how Rex learns to care about his people once again and even becomes a leader among them. How Liara nerds out so hard over her own romanticizing of the Protheans and how gobsmacked she gets after learning they're nothing how she imagined. Not to mention she becomes the galaxy's preeminent information broker on a whim. No big deal. Or even how Jack goes from traumatized, isolated edgelord unable to face her own vulnerability to damaged, angry, insecure edgelord who's working on herself. I joke, but her section at Grissom Academy was one of my personal favorites because of its connection to Mass Effect Ascension. If you're a fan of Mass Effect and haven't read the novels yet, do yourself a favor and just do it. The first 3 are written by Drew Karpyshyn, lead writer of the first 2 games. His deep intimacy with the universe and lore make them a fantastic read and connect some dots on the world of Mass Effect. But I digress. It could even be something as simple as kicking ass with Zaid and his loyalty mission action movie style. The relationships you develop with these rich and distinct characters define so much of the experience. So much so that some of you bought Garrus and Tali body pillows, and don't lie, they were sold out for a very long time. It doesn't change the time that you got to push a punk ass out a window at the top of a freaking space skyscraper.
I've got nothing more to say to you. If you shoot me, my team's right through there.
How about goodbye?
It doesn't negate the fun you had doing a space heist or seduce an alien succubus or a mother can murder her in cold blood. It doesn't destroy the feeling you get being the baddest motherfucker in Citadel space. It doesn't change the fact that you get to see a distinctly cold and calculating lizard man riff on Gilbert and Sullivan, and it certainly doesn't change Elcor Hamlet.
Fearful wonder, angels and ministers of grace, defend us. Be thou a spirit of health or goblin damned. Bring with thee airs from heaven or blasts from hell. Be thy intents wicked or charitable. Now come.
And there's something to be said about the ever-present and looming threat of the Reapers. Despite the sheer scale and terror of this threat, the most frightening thing about them is more personally invasive. The ability to indoctrinate sapient life and their ice-cold indifference towards those same lives is calculating in a way you truly expect from highly intelligent, Lovecrafty robot space monsters. It's wild to me that even after 13 years I can play classes I've never played, make decisions I've never made, and find new ways to play that I hadn't considered. Coming back to the trilogy in gorgeous 4K was all I could want and ever ask for. I even spent some time trying to kickflip the Mako, but damn, that sumbitch is hard to flip. Catching up with a colorful cast of squad mates, exploring the galaxy, and zooming through mass relays takes me back in glorious fashion, and frankly, I couldn't have asked for this at a better time. So thanks, Mass Effect. Thanks again. Kicking it with Samus, Metroid Zero Mission, Metroid Fusion, and Metroid Dread. Now, I'm what you'd call a later in life Metroid fan. I only beat Super Metroid for the first time in 2019, and I made it my personal mission to play more of this brilliant and underutilized series. Clearly, I haven't had a long and meaningful relationship with the franchise, but one thing I'll always remember is watching my friend play on a Super Nintendo probably like 25 years ago, and the music sticking with me my whole life. Plus, Samus was always pretty fun in Smash. The announcement of Metroid Dread was all the excuse I needed to jump back into this fascinating but cold, lonely, and sometimes tense and frightening world of Samus Aran. And seriously, the girl needs some friends. She's out here making friends with Ghost in the Shell fucking AI computers and shit. Yeah, looking at you, Adam. Between highly invasive bacteria, jerk-ass space pirates, self-destruction countdowns, several killbots with a hard-on for murder, and the titular baddies, she doesn't really seem to have a lot of positive interactions. Super cute animal bodies excluded, of course. I guess that's just the price of being the galaxy's top bounty hunter. And honestly, bounty hunter? Given all she does, she strikes me as more of a mercenary. Exactly what bounties is she collecting here? I played through 3 Metroid games this year, and I honestly enjoyed all 3 so much I couldn't really nail one down and wanted to talk about most, so they're all gonna get a bit of time in the spotlight here. Metroid Zero Mission is the remake of the game that started it all and strikes me as one of the best games in the series. Certainly one of the best playing games in the series. Like I said before, I started with Super, and while it's still an excellent game that holds up relatively well, certain facets of the gameplay starkly show its age. Zero Mission is not really held back by these limitations, even being released as far back as 2004. Zero Mission is the most swashbuckling and tonally light of the 3. They just kinda seem to get darker and darker with every subsequent entry. I haven't played any version of 2, but they seriously managed to make genocide look like a picnic compared to something as simple as returning back to your ship from the center of ZDR. It's just challenging enough that you'll definitely get stuck at times on the first playthrough, but it also gives you some serious opportunities to solve unconventional problems in unconventional ways. A Metroidvania in the most literal term. The game concludes on an ultra high note. Crashing back on planet Zebes, Samus ends up sans ship and armor and has to evade space pirates in her now famous Zero suit with a taser pistol. And I'm not gonna lie, getting caught was stressful as hell. The payoff for all that sneaking around is a powerful, souped up version of her battle armor. It leads to one of the most triumphant moments in the whole series, and I think is one of the first times I really see them dive into like the lore outside of whatever's going on whatever planet they're on. It's pretty interesting. The gratification of plowing down space pirates after being underpowered and on the run is indescribable and such a great way to end a game. Metroid Fusion was a whole different beast. It's like taking the well-honed gameplay of the sci-fi adventure and adding a genuinely creepy, tense atmosphere. This tale sees our brave heroine nearly overtaken by shape-shifting bacterial threat X. Damaged and more fragile than ever, and seriously, you take so much damage, everything hits so hard. She has to outwit and outmatch the SAX, a lethal and calculating copy of herself at her most powerful. The game does such a good job of building suspense and tension that I honestly dreaded encountering the creature. Chases and battles had me so tense I felt like I was losing my senses at times. It speaks to the strength of the game design that I could feel such strong, ever-present anxiety from a game that originally released on a portable device 19 years ago. I can't ever recall another game on the Game Boy Advance making me feel that way. The game also made for some interesting and unique set pieces and introduces us to the ship AI Adam, a digital amalgamation based on the personality of our former Federation CEO Adam Malkovich. I won't really get too much into that one since the most we know about him comes from Other M, and to unpack that one I'd probably need an entire other video. The enhanced horror elements of Fusion compound the sense of isolation and anxiety the series is well known for and help create a genuinely unique and special title. Now here we are finally in the year of 2021 and we've got a brand new Metroid game. Not a re-release, not Pinball, and not Federation Force. An honest to God brand new Metroid game in the form of Dread. I mean, I've only been in it 2 years, I can't even tell you how excited I've been for this game. Just like always, Samus is thrown right into the fray on the planet ZDR, a planet which has clearly seen the Chozo's touch. The sum total of their influence in galactic civilization seems to be pretty chaotic at best. And their reach must be so incredibly vast because nearly everywhere we go, they've once set up shop. Their de facto champion once more has to go clean their mess. She receives possible evidence that the Scourge of the X somehow survived the destruction of planet SR-388. Being the only thing immune to the horror of the X-Parasite, our hero bravely answers the call. Before sending her, the Federation sent 7 extraplanetary multiform mobile identifiers, or MEs for short, to investigate the presence of the X on the planet. Upon her arrival, Samus gets knocked out and the MEs get reprogrammed by a mysterious Chozo warrior named Ravenbeak, who seems to have a decent amount of insight on her past and origins. With story beats calling back to previous titles and the backbone of Samus Returns gameplay, Metroid feels slicker and more cohesive than ever. It was such a pleasure I wish I could experience it again for the first time. The Emmy zones are super tense, amplifying the tension you felt on the run from the SAX by removing scripted encounters and replacing them with designated zones where you're at the mercy of hyper-aware killbots who can and will eliminate you on sight again, and again, and again. Oh, no, you made it. Wait, but no, once again, just for good measure, because fuck you. The ongoing journeys of Samus Aran feel like a new friend or a gift I never knew I needed until I received it. In the hands of the right players, it becomes an art. Speedrunning is extremely popular due in part to this series, and I admire folks who do, but I've never really been able to wrap my head around complex sequence breaks and peak gameplay. And while I appreciate folks that find all the sequence breaks and instant boss kills and the like, I'm really more about the journey, not finding ways to subvert it. That's also code for me saying I'm not that good at it. I did, however, go back through once more and went for the crate instant kill sequence break, and it was so satisfying to pull off that I'm obviously going to put it in the video. Even if you've seen it 1,000 times at this point, I don't care. I'm happy about it. 2D Metroid has always been masterful when it comes to subtle notes and storytelling. Not every plot point or story beat is apparent, but there's always more boiling beneath the surface so long as you're paying attention. Dread has done an excellent job injecting emotion into our mostly silent hero through small visual cues and body language which clue you into what Samus is feeling at any given time in a cutscene. Even the way Samus speaks in that brief moment when she breaks from tradition and actually says something, it's an experience elevated due to the sheer novelty and surprise. I mean, we're talking about a Nintendo character here who says less than your average Link. That moment means so much more because it's something we never get, and the restraint and presentation they use make it even more meaningful. I enjoyed the subtle way boss fight intros indicate their weak spots to subtly nudge the player in the right direction. Another bit of continuity I really liked about Dread and how you defeat X-bosses is the same exact way you do it in Fusion. Having played Fusion like a month before, I instantly recognized the pattern. There's a tiny bit of a shielded grace period for the X when you hit them with a missile or a charged shot, where they come at you and you have to kind of flip over them or dodge them in any which way, and then you hit them again, and it's just like the same exact rhythm and tempo. It's just really interesting. As a new Metroid fan, Dread is everything I wanted and more. We get a kick-ass, morph-bombing, wall-jumping, shine-sparking experience that makes you feel right at home in the world of Metroid, and frankly I'm disappointed it took me so long to get into it. I don't fanboy much, but I will unquestionably stand Metroid. And there you have it, my top gaming moments of 2021. What games helped you get through the year? Which games were absolute bombs that you regret wasting time on? Let's get a discussion going. I had so much more I wanted to put in this one, but I already felt it overly long. I don't know, I like the longer form videos. What do y'all think? I know the world is still on fire, and each and every one of us is just trying our hardest to see it through. No matter where you are or what you've done to make it through another year, I tip my hat to you. As much as it's killing my inner pessimist to say this, we're all in this together, and just being able to make it every day is an accomplishment. Much love, everyone. Happy holidays and a better new year. I think we all deserve it at this point.